Okay, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to this week's discussion for our course Purposive Communication. So we are already under your Module 16A, entitled Your Communication for Work Purposes. So for under this module, we will be discussing the following, which are first, your workplace communication, and second, your methods of communication in a workplace. So at the end of this discussion, or at the end of this module, you are expected to, number one, give the meaning of workplace communication. And number two, identify the methods of communication in a workplace. So let's go now to what we call your workplace communication. So what is workplace communication? So by definition, workplace communication is the process of exchanging information and ideas, both verbal and nonverbal, within an organization. So when we talk about workplace communication, this is actually the act or the process now of exchanging informations or ideas, creating conversation, trying to convey now information, either in a verbal or non-verbal manner. So when we talk again verbal, or when we say verbal communication, these are communications that are articulated, or this comes out of our mouth. Whereas non-verbal is the opposite. These are not articulated. Rather, this can be in a form of written, in a form of your facial expressions or body movements or sign languages. Those are your non-verbal. And when we talk about workplace communication, we focus now on what we call your organization. So when we say organization, an organization may consist of employees from different parts of society. This may have different cultures, backgrounds, and can be used of different norms. So when we talk about organizations, there are a lot of organizations or community or societies now wherein it will have different purposes. Okay, and these organizations or society now are composed of different kinds of people now in different places. So they are gathered now in one organization, in one society for a particular purpose, despite having now different culture, different backgrounds, or different norms. So these people now that are gathered in one organization will have different culture, will have or might not have different cultures or backgrounds or your norms. So when we talk about cultures, they might or may not have now been found in the same area, or they are from different places or different countries. Their cultural beliefs, their traditions now are far different from one another. Their rules or the traditions that they follow or the norms that they follow can be different now with one another. But once they are now found in this organization or in this society, despite having these differences, they have now what we call common purpose. So when we say common purpose, whatever is the objective or the idea now in that organization, they have now the same understanding. Okay, so in terms now of your workplace communication, how important is having communication in a workplace? So the main idea now, or the main purpose of communication, is that it plays what we call a vital role in uniting the employees as well as achieving the society's objectives. Okay, so in this organization, it may be composed of large or small number of people. Okay, but the main idea here is that these people needs to be what we call united. So how will they be united now in that organization? So they use what we call communication. So in that organization, they have one specific purpose or objectives that they need to attain. And to attain that one, they use now communication in achieving those objectives. So in a group, you'll always have what we call your leader and your follower. So the leader is usually the one giving information, giving instruction of the things that or the objectives that they need to attain or they need to do. And once these goals now or these objectives were communicated properly, the things that they need to do were communicated properly, the tendencies that the followers or the employees now within this organization will be able to create or will be able now to do the task or the objective that were given to them. Okay, so that's why communication plays a very vital role, because without communication, it will not be possible now for these different people found in one organization or in one society to achieve one certain goal. Okay, so it is tremendously important to an organization because it increases productivity and efficiency. So when we talk about productivity and efficiency, these are actually positive outcomes or positive feedbacks coming from your employees. So if you are providing now what we call good communication, you are being able to communicate now in your workplace wherein they are able to create products or they are able to achieve now the task that you have provided with them, okay, with minimal supervision because you were providing now informations that are clear and understandable, automatically it increases also your productivity. Okay, how? Because you'll see that they'll spend more time doing the task rather than getting confused or taking so much time asking and asking again what they need to do, because all of them or most of them have already understood your instruction. And efficiency, because they are able to manage now their time or use their time once wisely. And when we see these kinds of productivity, efficiency, and achievement of your goals, this ensures now, or this means that the communication or the way that we are using communication in our workplace is effective. Okay, because we get what we call positive feedbacks. If we keep getting positive feedbacks after we give now or after we do workplace communication or after we communicate with other people in our workplace and they provide us with positive feedbacks, they provide us with good efficiency, increase in productivity, they see that our goals are reached, met, or achieved, those are positive feedbacks that would mean that the communication we are using is efficient. But positive communication now or effective communication does not happen most of the time or does not happen always. We also have what we call your ineffective workplace communication. So when ineffective workplace communication happens, it creates now what we call gaps, okay, among employees, wherein it will create or cause what we call confusion, mistrust, waste of time, reduces your productivity, and will create misunderstanding. So when we have ineffective communication, okay, when we keep giving instruction, we keep giving information, but the person now listening to you or the people listening to you is not able to understand what you are saying, or because you are not being able to convey the information properly, or because you're not conveying the message correctly, it creates now confusion. Okay, there's a possibility that one person understood it differently and the other person again understood it differently. Okay, so they might create now products that are far different from each other because the way they understood it is differently because of the communication you created. Okay, and if that happens, well, it causes now or it reduces now your productivity, because instead of you creating more products or you using your time wisely, the tendency that you create errors, you need to do it again. Then you'll keep repeating and repeating it. Okay, you'll start wasting time because you were not able to understand now the communication given to you. And if that happens, and if they see that you now as a leader, you are not able to communicate properly to your staff or to your employees, they will start to doubt or mistrust now your capabilities as a leader. So when they start doubting, they start having trust issues with whatever you are saying, it creates now misunderstanding. It will create misunderstanding, and it will create now chaos within your group or organization. Okay, because once one person starts doubting your capability, the tendency is that that person will not believe whatever you are saying already, because they think that the way you communicate to them or the way that you convey now this information is very ineffective. Okay, so to avoid that, or for us to avoid now these kinds of ineffective workplace communication, we have what we call your methods of communication. So these methods of communications are the different techniques or ways now of how we can create effective communication within our team. So in your methods of communication, to make sure that everyone understands the message conveyed in a workplace, methods of communication should be used. We have a lot of methods when it comes to communication, but it will always vary depending on the situation it needs to be used. Whether you need to use verbal communication or non-verbal communication, it will always depend now on the situation. But when we use these methods of communication, this will ensure now that the message that we are trying to convey will be conveyed accordingly or will be conveyed correctly. Wherein we will see now that all of these people or all of our employees where we conveyed now this information will have the same understanding. It's not possible that most of you are or you are talking about color blue and some of your employees case understanding is color red. That already creates what we call confusion because they have already different understanding. So you need to make sure that when we use the different methods of communication, it makes now that the understanding or whatever you are trying to convey will have the same understanding of the people listening to your communication. Okay, that all of them will have the same understanding. So the methods of communication must be simpler and precise when presenting vital information. So as I've said, the way we present things, the way we communicate things or convey messages later on, the methods that we will be using will depend now on the situation it needs to be used. But the main idea of these methods is that it makes now conversation or communication in your workplace simpler and precise. Why? Because we need to make sure that whatever words we will be using later on, whatever things now found in our conversation, it needs to be understandable. We should not be using words that are ambiguous or it can give double meaning. It doesn't need to be vague. It needs to be direct to the point so that it's very simple and precise. Especially when you're giving now information or trying to communicate now information that are very vital, yung mga important reminders or important information that they need to know or important ideas that they need to know, you need to make sure that for them to be easy for them to easily now understand what you are saying, you make now your words very simple. Okay? So good communication is what separates a poor leader from an exceptional one. And at the same time, they say that having effective communication skills is the key to good leadership. So when we talk about leadership, as what we've said, in an organization, we'll always have what we call leaders. And these leaders now will be the one guiding the employees or his or her followers now of the things that they want to do or they need to do or the things that they need to achieve. And to do that, that leader needs to have good and effective communication skills. You will not have many followers or you will not have many employees that will agree to what you are saying if you don't communicate effectively. Okay, that will make you now a poor leader if majority of the population you have in your organization or in your community doesn't follow you because you don't give communication properly. But if you know how to communicate, you know how to understand, you know how to deliver now what you're supposed to convey or what you're supposed to say, the tendency is that the people now will follow you or will believe now whatever you are saying. Okay, because they understand what you are saying, they easily see now or they easily visualize the idea that you are trying to present to them because of the way you communicate. Okay, so how do we communicate now effectively, or in what way can we now communicate effectively in our workplace? So we have what we call your ways of communication. So your ways of communication now will focus on the different ways or techniques, methods now on how we can communicate in a workplace. So it's always said now that the manner now of how you say things is more important than the content of what you are saying. So nowadays, we focus more on how a communication or how a message is being said rather than the content of the message, because most of the time people will not focus on what you are saying. They'll focus on how you are saying things or how you are trying to communicate. So we have actually different ways on what on to make sure now that we communicate effectively within our team, within our workplace, or within each and every one of us found in that organization. And the very first one is known as your open meeting. So when we talk about open meeting, this is the most popular way of communicating in a workplace. Okay, and this is the one mostly used in your workplace. It can be in a formal or informal manner, depending now on the situation once again. But most of the time, in your open meeting, we have what we call your agendas or certain topics that we usually discuss. Okay? And this is where we'll hear what you say and get their feedback in return. Okay, so after you said now all the information that you have want to say, so after saying all the necessary things that you want to provide to your employees, after all the topics now have been discussed in that conversation, after you talk, that's the only time you gather feedback from your colleagues or from the employees you have in your workplace. So if you are gathered in one area and you are actually talking about a certain topic and you've provided all the necessary information regarding this topic and the things that you want to achieve in this topic, after now this audience or after these employees have heard everything that you had said, okay, they will provide now their feedback. So they can provide you suggestions, they can provide you questions or clarifications in case they did not understand now your idea or the topic that are being discussed. These are known as your feedback. So feedbacks can be positive and negative, or positive or negative, depending again on the conversation that you are creating. So another type of your open meeting are the formal meetings that usually happens either monthly or weekly in an organization, wherein most of the employees or all employees are gathered in one space. Okay, and discussion now happens during this meeting. So during your formal meeting, you'll have what we call agendas. So you'll have 1, 2, 3, or 4 agendas depending now on the meeting that will be discussed on that day. And these agendas now will be presented either by the leader or another person in the group. So the tendency, the other members now of the group or the other employees will simply be the listener. So they listen to all the agendas, all the things that needs to be discussed, all the information provided for each agenda. Then after now all of these agenda are presented, okay, and are communicated, that's the only time they will be providing feedback. Okay, the speaker might say Do you want to add something regarding our agenda, or was there any error in our agenda? Do you want to clarify, or do you want to add something with our agenda? Those are how they get what we call your feedback. So open meeting can be formal or informal. Okay, it can happen within certain groups of people in the organization if you just want to simply communicate with each other. And it can happen formally now, as what we've said, your weekly meeting or your monthly meeting. Next, we also have what we call your emails. So emails are known to be the less effort type of communication found in your workplace. Okay, so the main idea why emails are used is to pass now messages without the need of leaving your workplace or workstation. So organizations tend to be big corporations. You'll have a lot of employees or large number of employees, and in some cases there are employees that are not found in the same level as you. So they might be found on the third floor, the others might be found on the first floor, depending now on when they are assigned. So if you want to convey now information or to talk now or create conversation with people that are not found within your area, okay, and you don't want to disturb them and you don't want them leaving their workstation or workplace, you can use now your nonverbal communication, which is your email. So you can just simply create email, okay, and in that email will contain now the information that you want them to know or the things that you want them to know. Then after that, informations now are sent. It will be delivered now to these specific people, wherein they will receive the communication, but they are not actually, there's no need for them to leave their workplace or workstation. That's why it's very less effort, because you don't need to worry about facial expressions, your body movements, or your body language. Okay, you don't need to worry on how you need to convey the message or how you need to talk. You just simply write everything in the email, then send it through your employees or the people now involved in that email. Okay. Next, we also have your one-on-one. It's very rare to do one-on-one, especially if you have very large corporations or organizations. Because in doing one-on-one, you got to understand their ideas without a prior hindrance. So when we talk about prior hindrance, there should be no bias when it comes to you doing the one-on-one conversation or communication. So when we do one-on-one, you usually take a person now or an employee of yours to the side for a one-on-one conversation without interruptions or without any hindrances. So when you're doing usually one-on-one conversation, you need to check now that there are no other people listening to your conversation. That's why it's called one-on-one. When do they usually do one-on-one? If they want to ask now if their employee or their staff are having a hard time with their job, or if they're having problems with the company, okay, or you just want to simply check how they are doing. It's also possible to do one-on-one if a staff or an employee of yours have created an error and you want to know how these errors were created or how did it happen. So that's how you usually do one-on-one. So you need to make sure that when you do one-on-one communication, okay, there should be no hindrance, there should no be interruptions, and there should only be two people creating the one-on-one conversation or communication. Next, we also have the use of your simple words. So as I've said, when it comes to the use of your simple words, as what I've said from the very beginning, do not use what we call ambiguous words or words that creates double meaning. Use words now that can be easily understood. Okay? So use words that are very common, words that are usually used. Do not use words that are very deep or highfalutin. You need to understand that some people will have or will not have the same vocabulary as yours as the leader. There will be words that you use but are not familiar now with the employees. So you need to make sure to make now an equal understanding within your employees so that they will be able to understand the same thing, you need to use now words that are very easy. Okay, instead of saying, I want to create a rapport with each and every one of you, if one employee doesn't know the word rapport, the tendency, it will create waste of time. Why? Because she might or he might be asking now other people what's the meaning of rapport. So you need to explain what's the meaning of rapport, when is rapport, the word rapport used. Okay, so instead of wasting time explaining, you could have just said, I want to have good relationships with you. Okay, so use simple words that are easily understood. Do not use vague or ambiguous words. Next, use visual. So visuals are very important because they say that when we do communication in your workplace, it's not just simply hearing the message, but in some aspects, you also need to see the message. So visuals now gives room for better comprehension. We need to take note that some people or some staff or employees of yours can understand or will understand better if they see now or they can visualize what you are saying or what objective you want them to do. Okay, so instead of just simply reciting now word per word of what they need to do, the step-by-step process of what they need to do, why not show a presentation or a visualization of what they need to do? Because the tendency, if they cannot visualize what you are saying, they might understand it differently, and each and every one of them might create a different product that is not the same with what you are asking. And it will create another chaos, misunderstanding, and waste of time in your corporation or in your organization. So the use of visual is very important if you are asking them now to do certain outputs or they need to create certain outputs. So visuals now are very important. Okay. Next, we also have what we call your body language. So body language plays a very important role in communication, especially in your workplace. Why? Because it is easier and faster to communicate using body language without using much of an explanation, because sometimes body and facial expression says it all, which is very true. People will know automatically what you are feeling just simply looking at your face, looking at your body language. They'll know already what you are feeling or what emotion is running through your mind. Okay, they might say that you're happy, you're sad, you're angry, you're agitated because of your facial expression. But do take note that when we talk about body language in your workplace, we are focusing now with how you use your body expression or your bodily language now, and facial expression should always match what you are saying. So to avoid confusion later on in your workplace, you need to make sure that whatever you are feeling, whatever emotion you are feeling, it should match now your facial expression or your body language. So if you're sad, it should reflect now your body language. Okay, so to avoid confusion or to avoid misunderstanding, because your leader might ask you to do this specific task and you said you're happy to do it, but your facial expression says the opposite. Okay, so there might be misunderstanding that will happen because of those body language. But in your body language now, it's important to focus on your eye contact. Okay, when you are communicating with another person or to any person now in your community or in your organization, always maintain eye contact. Okay, because it shows that you are listening to what they are saying or you're attentive to whatever information they are providing. Posture is also very important, whether you're sitting down or standing up. Always make sure that your back is straight. Okay, so posture. And lastly, smile. Okay, let's always smile when we are communicating with another person. So that is your body language. And lastly, we have what we call your phone conversation. So when we talk about phone conversation, So a person in a phone conversation can practice what they are going to say without seeing their facial expression. This is almost the same with your email, wherein you don't need to worry about seeing now the facial expression of the person you are trying to communicate to, or the body language now of that person you are trying to communicate to. But in your phone conversation, you practice now what you are going to say. You don't just simply call, okay, an employee and say things that are not practice or that are not, okay, correct. So most of the time when we create now phone conversations in a workplace, you are provided with different information, okay, of the person you are contacting to, the details now of this person, and the message that you are planning to convey or communicate with the other person. So before now you call this person or this employee of yours, you check first or you practice first what you are going to say. Okay, but at the end of the day, you will not worry about any facial expression, whether what you're going to say is positive and negative. Okay, you are not, or you will not be focusing now on their facial expression because you cannot actually see it. Okay, so these are the different ways now on how we can make your communication effective. Okay, at the end of the day, we just need to make sure that whatever ways we are using or method that we are using, it's appropriate for the situation. Because in an organization, the main idea now is to make sure that everyone will have the same understanding and every one of you will be able to achieve now these goals that you want in that certain organization. And that ends our discussion for today.